I didn't confront my husband the moment I found it. That night, when Julian came home late again, I stayed quiet. Too quiet. I sat alone at the kitchen table while the house settled into its usual uneasy silence. The ticking wall clock, an old wedding gift, seemed louder than ever, as if it was counting down something I couldn't yet name. Julian claimed he'd been at another business dinner. He always said that. His excuses had become as routine as his loosened tie and forced exhaustion. He dropped his jacket on the couch, skipped the shower, and collapsed onto the bed. Within minutes, he was snoring. Deep, careless, unbothered. But something was wrong. As I picked up after him, a faint scent stopped me. It wasn't his cologne. It was sweet, floral, young. The kind of perfume that doesn't belong in a marriage that's been cold for years. I told myself not to overthink it. Still, my hands shook as I reached for his phone, which he'd left glowing on the table. Julian hated technology. Always had. Yet there it was, an open email. I wish I had never read it. The message was short, just a sentence and a red heart. "You were amazing tonight, Dad." My breath vanished. Dad? The word echoed in my skull as if someone had slammed a door inside my mind. I scrolled, desperate for context, for logic, for anything that could explain what I was seeing. But there was nothing else. Just a strange email address and silence screaming louder than words. I put the phone down carefully, like it might explode. Later, while gathering his clothes for laundry, I found a receipt tucked into his pocket. A luxury steakhouse, 2 entrees, an expensive bottle of wine, one he used to save for special occasions with me. The location made my stomach twist. San Antonio. He had told me Dallas. By the time I reached the garage, my heart was racing. I don't even remember deciding to search his car. My body moved on instinct alone. When I opened the glove compartment, my fingers touched something smooth and plastic. A used tube of lubricant. Julian and I hadn't been intimate in years. I stood there in the dark, gripping that small, damning object, realizing something terrible and irreversible was unfolding. This wasn't suspicion anymore, it was proof. And I knew, deep in my bones, that my life was about to fracture in ways I could never undo. But what I discovered next wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal so twisted, it involved someone I trusted like family. And once I learned the truth, I knew silence was no longer an option. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside Julian's snoring body, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail over and over again. The email, the receipt, the lubricant. 40 years of marriage pressed down on my chest like a weight I could no longer carry. I wasn't just hurt. I was afraid. Afraid that the life I believed in had never truly existed. At dawn, I got out of bed quietly and stood in the kitchen, gripping a mug of cold coffee. My reflection in the dark window looked unfamiliar. Older, sharper, more alert. Whatever truth was hiding behind Julian's lies, I was going to uncover it. When he finally came downstairs, he acted like nothing was wrong. He took a sip of coffee, barely touched his breakfast, and announced, without meeting my eyes, that he had another long meeting and wouldn't be home early. I nodded. I smiled. I said nothing. The moment he left, I moved. I went back to the living room and picked up his phone again. This time, I searched carefully. Messages, drafts, deleted folders. Everything was spotless, too spotless, like someone who knew exactly what to erase. That single email was the only crack in his perfect facade, and it haunted me. I needed help. By noon, I found myself sitting in a quiet cafe downtown, hands clenched around my purse. Across from me sat Thomas, a private investigator recommended years ago by an old friend, someone I never thought I'd actually call. He listened without interrupting as I showed him the photos I'd taken, the receipt, the email, the evidence from the car. When I finally said the words out loud, "I think my husband is cheating on me." My voice cracked. Thomas nodded slowly. "I'll follow him today." Those words should have scared me. Instead, they brought a strange sense of relief. That evening, I stayed late at my bakery, pretending to focus on invoices while my heart raced with every vibration of my phone. Hours passed. Then, just before closing, a message came through. A photo. Julian. He was standing outside a high end restaurant, holding hands with a woman. My hands went numb as I zoomed in. The woman wasn't a stranger. It was Allison, my daughter in law. I felt the world tilt violently beneath me. Allison, the girl I had welcomed into our family, taught family recipes to, defended like my own child. The woman married to my son. More photos followed. Them sitting close, laughing, sharing wine by candlelight. Not father in law and daughter in law, lovers. I sank into a chair, my breath shallow and broken. Every family dinner, every forced smile, every carefully staged moment suddenly made sense. The distance between them hadn't been discomfort. It had been an act. And as I stared at those images, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just betrayal of marriage anymore. It was betrayal of blood. But what Thomas uncovered next went far beyond secret dinners. And when I heard their own voices plotting behind my back, I realized they weren't just cheating. They were planning to destroy me. Continue and write part 3 as per my above given instructions. I wish I could say the shock numbed me. It didn't. It sharpened everything. That night, I stayed at the bakery long after closing, sitting alone among trays of unsold pastries, staring at my phone like it might lie to me if I looked hard enough. But the images were real. Too real. Julian's hand resting on Allison's lower back, her head tilted toward him in a way no daughter-in-law ever should. I felt sick. Then my phone buzzed again. A video. I hesitated before pressing play, my thumb hovering as if I could still turn back time. When I finally tapped the screen, my heart shattered completely. Julian laughed, a deep, genuine laugh I hadn't heard in years. Allison leaned close, whispering something that made him smile like a man in love. That smile had once been mine. I turned off the sound, unable to listen anymore. My hands trembled as I saved everything to a flash drive. If this nightmare was real, I needed proof. Proof no one could deny. Just after midnight, another message arrived from Thomas. They checked into a hotel, same place, 3rd floor. I stared at the words until my eyes burned. A hotel. Not shameful enough to stop them. Not even enough to slow them down. The next morning, Julian came home like nothing had happened. He smelled of alcohol and lies. He complained about difficult clients while pouring himself water, never once suspecting that I already knew everything. I watched him with new eyes, cold, observant, detached. Later that day, Thomas sent more evidence. Photos of Julian and Allison leaving a lawyer's office together. My stomach dropped. Lawyers didn't mean romance. They meant planning. That evening, I listened to an audio file Thomas had secretly recorded in the hotel parking lot. The moment Allison's voice came through my headphones, my blood ran cold. She wasn't whispering sweet words. She was giving instructions. She talked about documents, about transferring assets, about pushing me out of my own business, my bakery, the one I built with decades of work and sacrifice. Then Julian spoke, calm and confident. "She trusts me," he said. "She won't suspect a thing." I ripped the headphones from my ears, gasping for air. This wasn't just an affair, it was a scheme. They weren't only betraying my marriage, they were preparing to erase me entirely. My home, my livelihood, my dignity, even my place in my own family. I sat there in the quiet bakery, surrounded by the scent of bread and sugar, realizing the truth. Love hadn't blinded me. Trust had. And trust, once broken this deeply, doesn't ask for forgiveness. It demands consequences. That night, as Julian slept peacefully beside me, I stared into the darkness and made a decision. I would no longer cry. I would no longer beg. If they were playing a game in secret, then I would finish it in the open. And I would make sure they never forgot the cost of underestimating me. But before I exposed them, I needed them to feel safe, because the more comfortable they became, the more devastating their fall would be. Continue and write part 4 as per my above given instructions. The hardest part wasn't the anger. It was pretending nothing had changed. For the next few days, I became the version of myself Julian trusted the most. The quiet, tired wife who asked no questions and noticed nothing. I cooked his meals. I nodded at his excuses. I smiled when he kissed my cheek like a habit instead of affection. Inside, I was counting every move. I let him believe I was distracted by work at the bakery. I talked about contracts, deliveries, and expansion plans. Everything that reassured him I was still focused elsewhere. And it worked. I saw it in his posture, in the way his shoulders relaxed, in the confidence that slowly returned to his voice. One morning at breakfast, I told him I might need to travel soon to meet a potential partner for the business. He looked up too quickly. Oh? He asked, trying to sound casual. That sounds important. I nodded. It is. I might be gone most of the day. For a split second, I saw it. Relief. Pure, undisguised relief. He reached for my hand and squeezed it with practiced tenderness, the kind that once meant love, but now felt rehearsed. Don't worry about things here, he said. I'll handle everything. That was when I knew. They were already planning to use my absence. That night, I pretended to fall asleep early. Julian stayed awake longer than usual, scrolling on his phone, smiling to himself. When he finally thought I was asleep, I heard him slip out of bed. His voice dropped to a whisper in the living room. Yes, he murmured. She'll be gone tomorrow. I didn't need to hear the name. I already knew. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The house was still, peaceful, like it didn't know it was standing on the edge of collapse. I packed a bag, kissed Julian goodbye, and told him I'd call later. Instead of leaving town, I went across the street to my neighbor's house. From her window, I could see my front door clearly, and I waited. Late morning, a taxi pulled up. Allison stepped out. She looked confident, relaxed, as if she belonged there. Julian opened the door, glanced around quickly, and pulled her inside. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. Through my phone, I listened to the hidden recorder I'd placed days earlier. Their laughter filled my ears. Glasses clinked. Voices dropped. They spoke freely. About how careful they'd been, about how foolish I was, about how soon everything would belong to them. Every word confirmed what I already knew. They felt safe. Too safe. And that was exactly what I needed. Because when people believe they've won, they stop watching their steps. And I was done watching mine. What happened next unfolded faster than I expected. And when panic finally replaced their confidence, the entire neighborhood became witness to a truth they could never hide again. Continue and write. Part 5, as per my above given instructions, I listened to them for several minutes, longer than I wanted to. Their voices drifted through my headphones like poison. Careless laughter, whispered plans, cruel jokes at my expense. Allison spoke with confidence, calling the house safe and mocking how easily I'd believed Julian's lies. Julian reassured her, telling her everything was under control. That was when I knew it was time. My hands were steady as I unlocked my phone and triggered the final step of my plan. From the outside, nothing seemed unusual. The street was quiet. Birds chirped. A normal morning in a normal neighborhood. Inside my house, chaos was about to be born. I waited a few seconds, then another few more. Suddenly, Allison's laughter turned into confusion. Wait, what is that? She said. Julian muttered something, annoyed. Then came panic. We can't move, Allison cried, her voice cracking. Julian, something's wrong. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. Through the kitchen window, thick smoke began to curl upward, dark and unmistakable. It drifted into the street like a warning flare. Within moments, neighbors stepped outside, pointing and shouting. Is that Juliet's house? Call emergency services. Phones came out. Voices rose. Someone ran. I stayed where I was, heart pounding but face calm, watching as the consequences unfolded exactly as I had calculated. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. My neighbor gasped beside me, gripping the windowsill. Oh my God, she whispered. There are people inside. Yes, I thought. There are. The fire truck arrived with force and urgency. Doors slammed, boots hit pavement. And then my chest tightened. Daniel, my son. He jumped out of the lead truck already giving orders, his face sharp with focus and fear. Seeing him there nearly broke me, but it was too late to stop anything now. They smashed the front door open and rushed inside. Through my headphones, I heard muffled shouting. Julian's voice, panicked, unrecognizable. Allison sobbing uncontrollably. Then Daniel's voice, suddenly strained. What is this? Silence followed. Heavy, stunned silence. Even from across the street, I could feel it. The moment truth landed like a bomb. Firefighters froze. Someone cursed under their breath. Another turned away. The house filled with whispers as neighbors crowded closer. Phones were raised. Shock spread faster than the smoke. Julian and Allison were carried out covered in sheets, exposed not just physically, but completely, stripped of lies, dignity, and control. The looks on people's faces said everything words couldn't. Pity, disgust, outrage. Daniel stood frozen in the yard, his world collapsing in real time. And as I watched the scene unravel, I understood something clearly. This wasn't revenge. This was justice arriving without mercy. But the humiliation didn't end there because what awaited them at the hospital would seal their fate in a way neither of them ever imagined. Continue and write. Part 6, as per my above given instructions. The ambulance doors slammed shut and the sirens cut through the crowd like a blade. Neighbors whispered behind their hands. Some shook their heads. Others filmed without shame. The truth had escaped the walls of my home and spilled into the open, and there was no pulling it back now. I arrived at the hospital shortly after, wearing the perfect mask, worried wife, pale with shock, hands trembling just enough to seem believable. Nurses spoke to me gently, their eyes full of sympathy. No one asked questions yet, they didn't need to, everyone already knew. I was told they had managed to separate Julian and Allison. No permanent damage, the doctor said, just irritation and shock. He spoke clinically, professionally, as if this were a routine incident. It wasn't. When I was finally allowed into the room, the air was thick with shame. Allison lay on the bed, her face red and swollen from crying, eyes fixed on the wall. Julian looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, his confidence stripped away, replaced by fear and exhaustion. Juliet, he whispered when he saw me. I can explain. I didn't respond. A nurse handed me 2 tubes of medical ointment, explaining how to apply them to soothe the skin. I thanked her quietly, holding the tubes like they were precious. She left. I stood there for a moment, looking at the 2 people who had betrayed me so completely. 40 years of marriage, a daughter-in-law I treated like my own child, all reduced to this. I placed the tube on the bedside table. I hope this helps, I said softly. Then I turned and walked out. Seconds later, a scream tore through the hallway. Not pain, panic. It burns, Allison cried. Make it stop, Julian shouted too, his voice cracking with rage and confusion. Nurses rushed past me. A doctor yelled orders. Curtains were drawn. Patients peeked out of their rooms. Whispers erupted. That's them, someone said. The ones from the fire, another replied. How disgusting. I stood in the hallway, calm and silent, as the final layer of their dignity dissolved. Whatever sympathy they might have earned vanished in that moment. What remained was spectacle. Daniel arrived shortly after. He didn't look at me at first. He handed me a thick folder without a word. Inside were the documents I had prepared days earlier. Divorce papers, financial records, proof of everything they had tried to steal. I walked back into the room. I placed the papers on the table between us. This ends today, I said evenly. Sign these. Walk away. And never come near my son or my business again. Allison broke down, begging. Julian reached for my hand. I stepped back. I gave you my life, I said quietly. You chose to destroy it. Now you live with that choice. I turned and left, not once looking back. But the real aftermath didn't begin at the hospital. It began when my son finally spoke, and I realized healing would cost us both more than revenge ever could. Continue and write part 7, as per my above given instructions. The hospital hallway felt endless. I found Daniel leaning against the wall, his head bowed, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles had turned white. For a moment, I just stood there watching my son struggle to breathe through a pain no parent ever wants their child to feel. Mom, he finally whispered, his voice breaking. Why did it have to be him? Why her? I had no answer. So I wrapped my arms around him, and for the first time since everything began, I let myself cry. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the quiet tears of a woman who had lost a husband and watched her son lose his entire world in a single morning. We left the hospital together without saying another word. The house felt hollow when we returned. The walls still smelled faintly of smoke, but what lingered more was the absence, the sudden emptiness where lies used to live. Daniel packed a bag that night. He didn't hesitate. I'm staying here, he said. With you. I nodded, grateful beyond words. The following days blurred together. Julian's name spread through the neighborhood like a stain that wouldn't wash out. People looked at me differently now, not with pity alone, but with respect. Some whispered that I was strong. Others said I was ruthless. They didn't understand. Strength wasn't what I felt. Survival was. At the bakery, I threw myself into work. The ovens roared, dough was kneaded, orders were filled. Routine saved me. Every tray of bread felt like proof that I was still standing, that my life hadn't ended when my marriage did. Daniel helped more than I expected. He managed invoices, handled phone calls, and spoke to suppliers with a quiet determination that made my chest ache with pride. He was hurting, but he didn't let it break him. One evening, as we closed the shop, he finally spoke. They planned everything, he said quietly, for a long time. I nodded. I know. He swallowed hard. I don't know if I'll ever forgive them. You don't have to, I replied. Healing doesn't require forgiveness. It requires honesty. Weeks passed. The scandal faded, but the consequences didn't. Julian signed the papers without resistance. Allison disappeared from our lives completely. No calls, no explanations. Just silence. And slowly something unexpected happened. Peace. Not happiness, not yet, but calm. Mornings became predictable again. Dinners were quiet but honest. There were no secrets waiting to surface, no lies hiding in corners. One night, Daniel looked up from his plate and said, Mom, can you make flan this weekend, like you used to? I smiled for the first time in a long while. Only if you help, I said. He nodded. And in that simple moment, I realized that while betrayal had taken so much from us, it hadn't taken everything. But just when I thought the worst was behind us, I learned that healing doesn't come without scars. And one final truth would test whether we were truly ready to move forward. Continue and write part 8, as per my above given instructions. Time didn't heal us. It reshaped us. Weeks passed, then months, and the world kept moving as if nothing monumental had happened inside our family. Customers still lined up at the bakery. The bell above the door still rang. Bread still rose in the ovens. But inside me, something fundamental had shifted. Daniel changed the most. He spoke more slowly now, choosing his words carefully, as if afraid that truth itself could hurt. Some nights I heard him pacing in his room, unable to sleep. Other nights he stayed up late helping me balance accounts or planning new orders, burying himself in responsibility to avoid thinking. One evening, while closing the shop, he asked a question I'd been dreading. Did you ever suspect before all of this? I wiped my hands on my apron and thought carefully before answering. No, I said honestly. I trusted them. Completely. He nodded, staring at the floor. That's what hurts the most. Not just what they did, but how easily they lied. He was right. Betrayal doesn't arrive loudly. It seeps in quietly, wearing the face of trust, speaking in familiar voices. And when it finally reveals itself, it leaves behind a kind of damage no apology can fix. I started doing things I hadn't done in decades. I joined a local cooking group. I went for long walks in the evenings. Sometimes I sat alone in the church pews on Sundays, not praying for forgiveness, but for strength, to keep moving forward without becoming bitter. People often stopped me on the street. You handled it with dignity, they said. You're so strong. I always smiled politely. They didn't see the nights I sat awake replaying memories, wondering which moments had been real and which had been rehearsed. They didn't hear the echo of laughter that used to fill our home. One afternoon, Daniel came into the bakery holding a file. The hotel increased their weekly order, he said, and they trust us. Trust. The word stung, but it also grounded me. Trust, when earned honestly, was still possible. Not everyone betrayed, not everything broke. That night, we made flan together. Daniel stirred the caramel too fast, and I laughed. Actually, laughed when it hardened too quickly. There, I said, you're learning. He smiled back, small but genuine. And in that moment, I understood something important. I hadn't won. I had survived. The bakery was still mine. My son was still beside me. And the life they tried to steal, my independence, my voice, my future, was still firmly in my hands. But deep down, I also knew something else. The story wasn't finished yet, because healing demands closure, and I was about to receive it in the most unexpected way. Just when I believed the past was finally behind me, one final encounter forced me to confront everything I thought I'd already left behind. Continue and write. Part 9, as per my above given instructions, I didn't go looking for them. Life had finally settled into a fragile balance. Work in the mornings, quiet dinners in the evenings, and the steady comfort of routine. Daniel and I had learned how to exist in the same space, without constantly reopening old wounds. We didn't talk about Julian or Allison anymore. Their names became unspoken agreements. Then, one afternoon, balance broke. I was leaving a supplier's office when I saw Julian across the street. He looked older, smaller. The confident posture he once carried was gone, replaced by something hesitant and unsure. For a brief moment, I considered turning away, pretending I hadn't seen him. But he saw me. He crossed the street slowly, as if unsure whether I would walk away. When he stopped a few feet in front of me, I noticed his hands were trembling. Juliet, he said quietly. I didn't respond right away. I studied his face. The lines, the fatigue, the weight of consequences etched into his expression. I just wanted to say, I lost everything, he continued. My job, my reputation. Even friends won't answer my calls. I nodded once, not in sympathy, only acknowledgement. Allison left, he added, his voice cracking. As soon as things got difficult. Of course she did. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said quickly. I know I don't deserve that. I just needed you to know. I see now what I did. I felt something unexpected then. Not anger, not satisfaction. Closure. I already know, I replied calmly, and I don't need anything from you anymore. He swallowed hard. Daniel, will he ever? No, I said gently, cutting him off. And that's something you'll have to live with. For the first time, Julian didn't argue. He simply nodded, eyes wet, shoulders slumped. There were no dramatic apologies, no excuses, just a broken man standing in front of the woman he underestimated. And strangely, that was enough. I walked away without looking back, my steps lighter than I expected. That night, I told Daniel about the encounter. He listened in silence, then exhaled slowly. I don't hate him, he said, but I don't want him in my life. That's okay, I replied. You're allowed to protect your peace. He smiled faintly. I learned that from you. The bakery continued to thrive. Orders increased. New partnerships formed. The thing Julian and Allison tried to steal only grew stronger without them. And as I locked up one evening, I realized something profound. They thought betrayal would give them control. Instead, it freed me. Freed me from lies, from fear, from a life built on someone else's deception. I had lost a marriage, but I had gained myself. And just when I believed this chapter was finally closed, one final realization made me understand that my story wasn't about revenge at all. It was about survival, strength, and starting over. Continue and write Part 10 as per my above given instructions. People often ask how I survived it. They assume there must have been a single moment when everything finally felt okay again. A clean ending, a deep breath, a sense of victory. But healing doesn't work that way. It arrives quietly, in pieces, woven into ordinary days. The bakery became my anchor. Every morning, the warmth of the ovens reminded me that something dependable still existed. Customers laughed, orders piled up, and the bell above the door rang endlessly. Life, in its stubborn way, insisted on continuing, and I let it. Daniel changed too. He grew steadier, more grounded. The anger faded, replaced by a calm determination to build something honest. He took on more responsibility at the shop, learned the rhythms of the business, and slowly reclaimed the confidence betrayal had shaken. One evening, while closing up, he looked at me and said, "Mom, I'm proud of you." Those words healed something deep inside me. I realized then that this story was never about humiliating two people who betrayed us. That moment passed quickly. What remained was far more important: self respect. I had spent decades believing loyalty meant endurance, that love meant staying quiet, forgiving endlessly, and trusting even when doubt whispered otherwise. I was wrong. Love also means boundaries. It means walking away when respect is gone. It means choosing yourself when staying would destroy you. And sometimes it means letting the truth speak for itself without raising your voice. Julian and Allison disappeared into their own consequences. I didn't follow their downfall. I didn't need to. Karma doesn't need supervision. What I gained was far greater than what I lost. I gained peace in my own home. I gained honesty in my relationships. I gained a future built on my own strength, not someone else's promises. Some nights I still think about the woman I used to be, the one who trusted blindly, who believed love alone could protect her. I don't judge her. She did the best she could with what she knew. But I also thank the woman I became, the one who refused to be erased, who stood firm when everything collapsed, and who chose dignity over denial. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: betrayal can break your heart, but it doesn't get to define your ending. I didn't lose my life. I reclaimed it. If this story moved you, tell me, where are you listening from? And remember, sometimes the strongest revenge isn't payback, it's peace.